We will continue on our third presentation today with Loreta Castro and Elena Tudela. Loreta Castro is a Mexican architect and urban designer, co-founder of Taller Capital and professor at the School of Architecture at UNAM and the Taller Hídrico Urbano. Elena Tudela is also a Mexican architect and urban designer and teaches at the School of Architecture at UNAM.
Thank you very much, Charles, Adriana, Pedro, GSD, for having us here in this event. We're going to talk today about a project that is very important to us in many ways and that has become a very important experiment in different ways that we'll talk about today. And it's called Parque La Quebradora. And one of its main characteristics is that it has been able to take advantage of certain opportunities that have enabled it to exist. And sorry about that. And one of them being that this project is developed by an academic institution, UNAM, especially the Institute of Social Studies. And our client has been Delegación Iztapalapa, which is this local government entity of one of the largest delegaciones in within Mexico City that holds near 2,000 inhabitants, which is a very conflicted territory in terms of political issues and aspects, among many others. And so I'm going to go rather quickly through the history of the basin, which you've heard about many times today. And I mean, we keep putting it here because it sort of frames the way we face landscape and territory and all the urban interventions in the city. And so, well, we have the original basin, which you've seen before, and how the balance that it held and how obviously we don't have that anymore. And now we're going to see a little bit of the history of this Delegación Iztapalapa, which I was talking about before. This is 1350, 1510, and how it has expanded. And you can see where the lake, the specific site of our project, the Quebradora, is the red dot within that red polygon. And so you can see the street that goes by, or the path that went by bordering the lake from east to west, and that still remains part of its urban origin and part of the project itself. So you can see how the lake stops existing and how it develops until we get to 2013, and this is the scenario that we have currently. And you can see how that area within the dot, where the dot is where Quebradora is, which lies between lacustrine soil, ground, and basaltic rock, which we've also heard today. This is our current situation of imbalance in terms of hydric aspects and how we bring water from other basins, accounting for basically 30% of the water availability for the city. And this is the periodicity of the floodings that we've had. And you can see how there's been periods where we have none, and those correspond to the times where large, hard infrastructures have been built, and how even if we build all these large, hard infrastructures, we keep having these floods coming back. Then we have an image of something that's also quite invisible, which is the subsidence of the ground. We lie on a neovolcanic area at risk of earthquakes, but also the sinking local conditions that have made the cathedral sink 8 meters in a very short time period. And this is the way that we've dealt with our water issues, through tunnels and pipes, very expensive and hard to manage and maintain. And this is part of the vision that we've all been talking about, and how no matter the size of the site that you can operate in or from, you need to understand the whole basin and understand its geology and its water sources. So this takes us to the idea that landscape almost necessarily has to become an infrastructure under that context, and how we've heard earlier also about chinampas. This is an aerial image of it, how they're at risk right now of disappearing, but how this is the way the city was able to exist from the beginning, and how we need to go back to understanding landscape as that infrastructure as well today. This is the site itself in Iztapalapa, as I've mentioned before, and you can see the red area, that's our site, precisely at the edge of that ground changing condition between waterbed and rock, and the mobility infrastructure that allows the 2,000 inhabitants to move. 2 million, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. So here you got an idea of what Iztapalapa is like, which is the most marginalized area of the whole of Mexico City, and how it's the area with the least public spaces, open spaces, green spaces, and also the poorest. So it's dense, it's poor, it's terrible. And that's what it used to be like in the 40s, 41, and this is what it looks like today. It keeps expanding, eating up suelo de conservación, it's conservation land, putting at risk not only Iztapalapa, but also the rest of the city. And then we have this hydric paradox that expands not only for Iztapalapa, but throughout the city, that has to do with the lack of drinking water, and also the floodings that if you stay here a couple of days, you might be able to see. This is the site again, and it's interesting because it was a retaining basin at some point where they used to let the water go when there wasn't a proper sanitation system. Once the sanitation system got implemented, this became like an infiltration area. So it has a very important function in terms of infrastructure already, but people don't recognize it, don't see it, and they don't know it. And the area that you can see to the north of it, or to the upper side, gets flooded, heavily flooded. Here's that site that you can see. Today it just holds waste. People don't recognize its role, and so and it's all, you can't see what's going on there, and it seems like a vacant lot when actually it can infiltrate a lot of water. I'm going to go fast through this. These are just the conditions of no public spaces, of density, you know, the drinking in sewage systems, how it communicates with this very important main road that I was talking about earlier, and how it becomes an insecure place as well because it's a closed area. We've worked with people with sessions because this area is not easily intervened. People have a lot of needs, and it's very interesting to see. This is the analysis they made of where the issues are. So basically all around our site. And these are some of the tactics that we've implemented, and even though they seem very happy at some points, they weren't that joyful.
Thank you. So we developed our project departing from three main axes: the hydro environmental axis, the urban landscape axis, and the social cultural axis. And the first one gave us the basis, so the first one gave us the basis to develop the entire project. Our main objective here was to control a very fast runoff coming from over the Sierra Santa Catarina, and control or help diminish a flood that happened in Ermita and the crossroads with Santa Catarina. So to do this, what we did was to keep the land intact in the places where infiltration could happen, and then to take a portion of the sewage system and treat it by a water treatment plant and a combined wetland system. So here you can see how we take the runoff to these two basins, and then how we pull the sewage into the water treatment plant, and the wetland system, and then we use the water produced here for sanitaries, for toilets, because people in the area do not have access to water, even though they have the furniture. And what we're providing is a lot of toilets so that they can use these spaces on their way towards work. And you'll see this in the next diagram, where we show mobility. So what we did here is opening the plot in most of its sides and making it obliged stop to access Ermita Iztapalapa. And then, with the help of the neighbors, we developed the program for the site. We did a lot of working models, a lot of proposals, until we got to this diagram where you can see our main scope was to treat the site as a set of platforms from the upper part to the lowest, helping infiltration here in the lowest parts, conducting the treated water on the upper parts, and then building upon the rest of the site with a structure of squares and platforms. So this is a view of mobility, how it will happen in the area with the park. We're trying to take into consideration what already happens, which is bicycles. Then a view towards Sierra Santa Catarina, the section of the project where you can see the platforms, the main entrance. We're taking also a lot of cultural spaces, a library, a museum, taking profit of the landscape and of the topography. There's a solution in putting into practice thousands of these. Thank you very much.